All right, because there were two of us doing this presentation, there was a little bit of a rush getting the mics set up, but I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, so hi everybody. Thank you all for hearing us. My name's Derek Schwabe, and I work for Bread for the World.
And I'm Leigh Fonseca with Living Data. And Derek and I operate in very different worlds. And a bit oversimplified, I work in the private sector, in the business space, and I help my clients sell sneakers and dresses and Chanel makeup. And I help them understand their customers.
And I basically work on figuring out how to end hunger.
We met here at Tapestry 1 year ago today. And we're here because, like all of you, we believe in the power of data storytelling. But probably like a lot of you, we have moments when we're not fully confident about how our stories and the stories that we're telling impact people's lives. And so we want to share with you what we've learned over the past year about our partnership and about the insightful data stories paired with grassroots advocacy can achieve tangible wins in the effort to reduce hunger and poverty worldwide.
So I wanted to start out with just talking about advocacy, which is what Bread for the World really does. I want to start out with a definition, actually, that I think will just help. So it's a good idea to establish what we're talking about here. So for Bread for the World and for me and my work, advocacy is the process of speaking truth to power in an effort to influence decision makers and affect change. For those of us who work with data, I see advocacy as the place where kind of the rubber meets the road. It's where data is made actionable. Not only are people reading or interacting with data, whether it's through stories or through journalism, but they are making conclusions about the data that they're interacting with, and then actually pushing for change through our policymakers, with our policymakers, to see the change that they would like to see as a result of what they've learned in the data. So Bread for the World is a grassroots organization. We are entirely focused on advocacy. That's all we do. And our mission really is to get the US policymakers, the president and Congress, serious about ending hunger worldwide and in the US by 2030. We have a very passionate group of about 100,000 advocates all across the country. These are really active people who will take the data that you all, or many of us, put out there, and they will take it to Capitol Hill, they'll take it to the president, and they will use it to push for change. Bread for the World is often called the conscience of Capitol Hill, in that we are constantly, our members, in meeting with their congresspeople, in writing letters, in making phone calls. These are the people that are pushing for change on a daily basis. And so at Bread for the World, we focus mostly on what we call the root causes of hunger, things like wage stagnation, discrimination, corruption, and conflict.
So how is advocacy important to ending hunger? This simple visualization might offer the clearest answer.
For some reason, it is not advancing for us.
Maybe plug this guy in. So the visualization that you're about to see.
Hopefully. Well, do you want to just describe it,
Yeah,
and then we'll try to fix this here?
If you were to represent all of the food assistance that is provided in the United States, you could represent it with 20 bags. Imagine 20 bags of groceries. And of those 20 bags, only one of those bags is food that is donated from the private sector, from churches and food banks and soup kitchens and mosques and synagogues. And the other 19 bags come from federal assistance programs in the United States. And in 2015, the House of Representatives proposed cutting that assistance by a third, which would take 6 bags away. And in doing that, seriously jeopardize the health and welfare of Americans. Not only the people who rely on that food, but the organizations that work together to provide that one bag came back and said, there's no way that we can fill this gap. And so this visualization has been really, really effective at helping communicate how important these programs are and the needs of people who are struggling to keep up with it.
So that threat, the threat to cut this 1/3 of those bags of food from our food assistance safety net was very real. Hold on, let me just put my password in here. We're going to try to get this back up for you guys. Look at that. So the threat was very real, but Bread for the World members, this is where where advocacy really came in. We mobilized all of our advocates across the country. They made phone calls. They met with their leaders. They wrote letters. And they were able to really hold back those cuts from going into effect. And we have a very close collaboration with faith leaders, many of whom faith leaders are running a lot of that one bag, the charities. They're the ones who are speaking out and saying, look, we can't pick up the slack if you cut 1/3 of our nutrition safety net programs. So they were the ones who could really speak with credibility in doing that. So I came to Tapestry last year based on experiences like that, realizing the power of data to drive change. And I knew that if we wanted to be effective as advocates and to reach that 2030 goal, we had to be acting more strategically in the storytelling space. And too often, nonprofit organizations are just not doing that.
So I came to Tapestry last year at a transformative place in my business and personal development. I had built a solid base of great private clients and had made a decision to carve out part of my practice to do what I'm calling good works with data. And so while at Tapestry, I was looking for an opportunity to find someone to collaborate with. I was looking for a partner who would want to utilize these skills that are working very effectively, working with private clients, and use them to do something that affects change in our everyday world.
So to put this a little bit in perspective, last year when Leigh and I met, I was right in the middle of, or Bread for the World, I should say, was right in the middle of trying to figure out this new problem that's emerging in the hunger world called hidden hunger. It's a very complex nutrition phenomenon that's really, it represents a changing face of hunger globally. So the good news is that we're making big progress on serious malnutrition, indicators like stunting, wasting. I mean, this is the severe hunger that you might see on TV or hear about. That's been cut in half since 1990. But at the same time, we've seen a huge increase in rise in obesity and overweight, and along with that, a rise in a huge avalanche, as we put it, of non-communicable diseases that are really raining down on these countries now. And so these non-communicable diseases, these countries are completely unprepared for. Their health systems are very, very weak. And so while we're making progress in some areas in reducing severe malnutrition, we have this problem of what some people call overnutrition, where people are still not getting the right nutrients that they need. And in some cases are getting too much calories along with that. And there's actually been a proven connection between malnutrition in children and overweight and obesity, and then the non-communicable diseases that follow in adulthood. So there's been a link made between those two. So it's a complex problem, but it's the changing face of hunger as we know it. Here's the 1 in 20 graphic we were talking about earlier. And here was our call that we put out. We were looking for partners to help us, people who work with data, to help us dive into all this data on hidden hunger, this complex story, and help us expose this thing that really has been hidden to most people in the developed world.
So during the speaker break last year, Derek was sharing this with me and invited me to participate in a visathon. He'd shared with me that the year before that they had done an event where they'd had some people donate time one day in a visual hackathon. But I'm based in San Francisco and Derek is in DC. And I said, well, you know, we are such an amazing community and we have the power to do so much more. And in looking at this, I knew that we could do more than me volunteer remotely and just sign on and join that cause and join them in their one day. And so instead we decided, let's host a bi-coastal event. Let's do this in San Francisco and DC at the same time. Let's take this from one person to 50 people. And Macys graciously donated their San Francisco offices. We brought together a really amazing collection of people, including a lead data scientist from Chevron, data visualization manager from Macys.com, Bay Area engineers working in Python and R. We even had a seminary student who was participating who had no background in data but was deeply committed to addressing hunger. And she's presenting a slide that she produced during that one-day visathon to help us understand some of the qualitative information that we were looking at with these data sets that were donated by IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute. And then in DC, going on at the same time, John Schwabe of HelpMeViz.com, many of you know, was helping lead the DC event simultaneously.
Yeah, so the data was big and messy, and we just threw it out there to the group, and we did our best job to curate it in advance to help them get a bit of a head start on it. But they were amazing. We had a team in DC, a team in San Francisco. The team in DC got a 3-hour head start, and then they had a meeting while about noon for DC. They were able to kind of live stream over to San Francisco and say, hey, we cleaned the data, here it is, we dropped it in GitHub, or we found these pitfalls in the data, but you should look out for this. Here's a story that we found. And so it was a really great cross-coastal collaboration that helped generate a lot of ideas that really took us months and months to go through.
So the first day was just the first step, though, and this was really hard for some people because this really is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and so we can't solve this problem in one day. And as we were working on this, have you ever felt like when you start a data exploration project, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall? I mean, you're exploring all of these ideas, and you're trying to see if the data goes this way or that way, and we came to a lot of dead ends. But my inner optimist reminds me that this is a good thing because it helps us focus our story. It helps us focus our inquiry and our investigation by understanding, focusing our attention and knowing where not to look. So we had a lot of adventures in where not to look. Dr. Seuss's Where Not to Look. And so for many, this can be really difficult. It's unsatisfying. It leaves you wanting. Some people felt as they were leaving the visathon that they hadn't done enough and that there had to be more and we had to be able to do more of this in one day. And we talked with them about the great accomplishments that we'd had in focusing the discussion and being able to focus the inquiry. And then Brad took all of that information and spent months poring over it to find where we were going to go next.
Yeah, so we were completely floored by everything that came out of that one day. And so from there, it was a few months of kind of sifting through, processing, figuring out where the best leads seemed to be. And then from there, it came down to forming a plan in a team to build beyond just the one day. And that's really where I think the rubber hit the road for us. Yeah,
so I checked in with Derek to see how things were going, and And we decided that we were going to do a short, focused project using results that had come out of the Visathon. We had a direction that we felt like we could go in. We had some questions that we felt like we specifically could address. I was speaking at a San Francisco Tableau user group, and I put out a call for volunteers and asked people if they wanted to be part of a fall quick viz on hidden hunger. And we had great reception. We ended up with 7 active people who participated in it. Within a week, we were up and running using Slack. We did all of our collaboration remotely. I met Derek last year at Tapestry and met the rest of the team at the San Francisco Tableau user group, and all of the rest of our interactions were completely digital. So it became clear in our initial discussions with Derek that there was much confusion about the associations between food insecurity, between hunger and obesity. And that the hunger as we think of it, hunger that you imagine when you see emaciated children on your television, that's really something that's moving into the past, that is not the face of hunger today. And if we don't understand what hunger looks like today, we're going to miss it, and we're going to miss an opportunity to solve the problem. So as we began breaking down the data and developing some classification schemes, we agreed that the hidden hunger viz needed to communicate 3 key points. First, this is our team.
Yeah, very first is
our Slack team.
And actually, I think you were out but KK tweeted in a question to the previous, so I think he's watching right now. So hey, KK.
So first, severe malnutrition is down. So we are feeding people enough calories. Second, obesity is on the rise. We're feeding people the wrong food. And third, diseases that we previously thought were diseases of the Western world, diseases like heart disease and diabetes and cancer, are diseases that are growing at an alarming rate in the developing world. And the developing world is not prepared to handle it. Think of how difficult it is for us and our infrastructure to deal with our growing healthcare problems. The developing world doesn't have that infrastructure. And children who were hungry and undernourished are far more likely to be obese and have these modern diseases than children who were not. And this is the important message that people need to understand about the new face of hunger. So the team quickly self-organized around these ideas. And we had a stellar team. Each person tackled a different piece of the story. Kip, Chris, and KK all contributed to reshaping the data and identifying gaps and inconsistencies. And Kip developed an economic classification scheme that allowed us to group countries, that helped us understand specifically how malnutrition was affecting them and its relationship with economics. Elena, KK, Chris, and I began building views, and our Slack channel was loaded with questions, and ideas. I think we've got our slides out of order. But what very quickly happened is that the team came together around color and style choice and font, and the story that is now on the 2016 Hunger Report has 5 visualizations in it and 5 or 6 photos with story points for them that came together through collaboration on the group, on the Slack channel, recognizing bread's dominant, their color scheme, and immediately integrating that into the rest of the story. Yep. I want to say that I'm really thrilled that not only did the Hidden Hunger win a Viz of the Day in December, but it won a Viz of the Week in January, which meant that it was hosted in the Tableau client for an entire week in January. And that is great exposure to get people's attention and awareness around this very important cause.
And then on top of that, we put the finishing touches on this Viz early this year and included it in the website for our 2016 Hunger Report. The Hunger Report is Bread for the World's chief educational tool for our advocates. So putting it there will ensure that they see it, they use it, they take it to their meetings with lawmakers. It informs their advocacy quite strongly. And so now there it is, and I have to say, seeing it kind of sitting there as one cohesive piece, I still have never met a single person on the team that put this together besides Leigh. It's all been Slack conversations and 1 or 2 phone calls.
So the work of changing big policy issues like hunger and poverty is a marathon race. It's not a sprint. It can take years or decades for conditions to align for a particular issue. But data-driven analysis and more compelling storytelling makes a difference. It doesn't just inform action, it inspires it and helps build political will. And it builds storytellers. The people who were involved in this project used words like enthusiastic, inspired, meaningful, aligned, honored, grateful. One person said that as a data storyteller, he felt that it was both a duty and a calling.
So the Hidden Hunger tool, since we just finished it earlier this year, it's kind of difficult at this point for us to see exactly how it will impact our advocacy work going into this coming year. But we do have an explicit campaign that we're working on to try to push through maternal and child nutrition legislation this year. So we anticipate that tool will be really helpful as we try to educate our lawmakers on the way that hunger is changing. But I wanted to talk about a tool that we did last year that I think a very different approach, but was extremely effective. It's been around for a little bit longer, so we do have some tangible wins that we were able to gain from using this tool that I want to talk about. And this is this is what gets me really excited about bringing good data storytelling into advocacy work, because you can trace the ways that visualization helped that lawmaker vote that way, or choose to support this piece of legislation. And that translates into direct assistance and economic empowerment for people who are most marginalized in our society. So this very powerful tool is about missing data on women. Our hunger report last year was on women's economic empowerment. And as we were diving into research on that report, we discovered pretty quickly that it was very difficult to understand how women were doing worldwide because there's so little data. So we thought, wow, how can we even start talking about empowerment? Maybe we should be talking about how little data there is. So that was our first Visathon event with John Schwabe, and out of that event came this image, which is essentially a heat map in which you have countries would be listed along the bottom, the columns, and then the rows are specific indicators of women's empowerment, 52 of them that are curated by the United Nations. This is the best data that we have right now on women worldwide. This is the global view. And the transparency of each of those pixels basically represents how much data or little data we have. So if you can see the woman's face, that means we have more. If you can't, it means we have less. So obviously, we're missing a very, very large portion of the data needed to track progress on women's empowerment. And when you don't have the data, when you can't see, you don't have the data to see how women are doing, it's like they're invisible. And that's the approach that we really wanted to drive home. It also had, this tool is pretty interactive. You can go into the regional view. You can look by region and see how much data is there. And then you can look at different domains of the specific indicators. It has the indicators in countries that have the highest amounts of data missing. And then you can actually click on that "Who is she?" icon there and find out the story of the girl or woman in the photo behind. And it will show the person's full face. So this was a really powerful tool, and I can say after a year of using it in our advocacy, it's helped us specifically secure 70 new co-sponsors for a $1 billion aid program that empowers women, the Global Food Security Act, which in the House, and we were expecting that bill to pass this year. This tool was very helpful to us in pushing progress on that and making the invisibility of women real to Congress. And at the UN, it's propelled women to the forefront of a growing discussion on what they call the data revolution. It was featured at the Cartagena Data Festival in April last year, and it's helped, along with a few other tools and other partners we've been working with, to elevate women to the top of that discussion about the need for a data revolution globally.
So what does this mean for all of you? Become a transformative data storyteller. Everyone in this room has something that they care deeply about. Everyone has some passion, a cause that is worthwhile, something that touches your heart, and you have amazing skills. Each person here has the ability to make a significant, appreciable difference. Use the power of storytelling with data and find your advocate. Find a partner. Find someone who you're going to be able to work with that you can bring your skills to lend, to work with their forces. This collaboration has worked very well because Derek's team has an amazing group of advocates and data and questions that they're working hard to answer. And I was able to work with more people like you in this room to help them answer these questions.
So go out and find ways to leverage your skills by partnering with mission-driven organizations like mine that already have the credibility and have a voice with decision makers. They have the ear of them. So all you have to do is help them communicate or translate those stories and bring those stories to life. I can tell you that groups like mine, we are passionate about the issues. We have a lot of data that we're working with. We don't always know the best way to tell that story. But it could be your outside perspective or your creative idea that makes it click for policymakers. So you guys have a lot that you can bring to the table.
So we all need to connect. And this is a great forum because Tapestry brings together people from many different disciplines. But when you go home, think of the causes and disciplines that you can engage with, whether it's your local school or something that you're particularly interested in for the environment. You know, I recognize that I could become a transformative data storyteller. I could use my skills. I could use my powers for good. And I could do things like empower everyday people in their advocacy to end hunger through policy change specifically, to improve education by improving access and opportunity, and help protect our environment and oceans by providing polluter data to organizations that are fighting legally to end pollution in our bay. All of these are opportunities that each of us have. So please go and do good works with data. Thank you.
Thank you.